Hi everyone, welcome back to another anatomy episode. In today's video, we're going to be going over the special senses of the eyes. So please like and subscribe for more content. And now we're going to get into the first diagram. This is basically showing a mid-sagittal cut of an eye. So the first structure that we have is this white little layer that is overcoating everything. That is going to be your cornea. So the cornea is that white layer right over there. Then we have your anterior chamber, which is going to be this little hole over here within the diagram. You can see that it's a little bit hollowed out, so anterior chamber. Then we have your iris. So you have your iris both over here on this side and then also on this side right over there. It's going to be that dark blue structure that is sitting right up against the lens, and that is your iris. Then you have your ciliary body. The ciliary body is going to be this black kind of squiggly area over here on the side, and you can also see your ciliary body over here on this side. So right over there. Now, we also have your suspensory ligaments. The suspensory ligaments are going to be these red little lines that you see over here, and they are connected to the lens. They're basically holding the lens in place. So, right over there are the suspensory ligaments. All right. And then finally, this white bead looking structure over here. It kind of looks like the shape of an eye on its own. So this white part over there, that is going to be your lens. Then we move into the posterior cavity. So this light blue area over here, oops, there we go. This light blue area over here, all of this is going to be your posterior cavity. And within the posterior cavity, you have something called vitreous humor. And it is basically a liquid that is just going to be kind of like filling up that cavity. So if you have ever done like eye dissections or anything like that, then you would know that if you press too hard when you're cutting open the eye, something will like kind of squirt out, and that is the vitreous humor. All right, next we have three different layers over here on the back side. So the first layer is going to be over here in yellow, and that is your retina. So the retina is known as your nervous tunic because it has a lot of nervous tissue and a lot of kind of just like nerves. Then, if we zoom in, you'll see that there is this black layer that is right up against it over here. That black layer is known as your choroid tunic. So, choroid tunic, and that is your vascular tunic. So we have the nervous and then the vascular. And then finally, the white is going to be your sclera. So this thick white portion, that is your sclera right over there. And that is just a protective layer that is kind of like cushioning your eye to make sure that none of the nervous or vascular tunics are being damaged. So even when you look in the mirror at your eyes, you see the white portion of your eye, that is the sclera. All right, next we have your fovea. The fovea is going to be this little bump over here. And if we actually take a look at this diagram below, it's zoomed in, which is really nice, and you can see it even better. So right over there, that is your fovea. And then we have the optic disc. So the optic disc is going to be this back area over here. This is also known as your blind spot. So you cannot see in the back of your head, and that is therefore where your blind spot is, and that's also the location of your optic disc. Another important thing to know is that your fovea only has cones. Cones are going to be responsible for color. So all of your color vision and everything like that only has cones, which are responsible for color. And then if you guys have heard of the terms like cones and rods, rods are the one that is going to be responsible for the monochromatic vision, aka black and white vision. Finally, the very last structure that you need to know is your optic nerve, which is just over here, this back region. All of that is going to be your optic nerve, and it sends signals from what you are processing through the light, through your eye, to the brain so that it can interpret it and make pictures and then associate those pictures with certain words or meaning. All right, so now we're going to look at some histology of the eye. So this is what an eye would look like under the microscope. As you can see your cornea, your anterior chamber / anterior cavity. Then you have your irises. You have over here one iris, and then over here another one. This over here is going to be your lens. We have the ciliary body over here, this kind of like squiggly area. Your posterior cavity is this whole white portion. Then we have the optic disc with the optic nerve. Your fovea would be this little dent over here. And then if you were to zoom in, you could see your retina, choroid, and sclera. So when we look over here, you can see all of those different layers. This is a zoomed in version of this back piece over here. So that is what this image is showing. First of all, you can see nuclei of ganglion cells. So here are going to be your ganglion cells, and then inside you have your nuclei. Then you have the bipolar cells over here. So they kind of look a little bit like red blood cells, and there are a lot of them combined together. And then you have your photoreceptors. Photoreceptors basically means rods and cones. So these darker ones over here, these are going to be your rods. And then over here, these are your cones, the second layer that is depicted. Now, everything that is shown here, this is all part of the retina. So the retina includes ganglion, bipolar, rods, and cones. Then we have your choroid, again, your vascular tunic. So you can see that it looks a lot more stringy and it's just a single layer. There's not a lot of different factors in it, such as the retina has. The retina has like tons of different types of cells in it. The choroid is just all kind of very stringy looking cells. And then finally, the sclera is going to be a little bit darker. You're going to have some muscle tissue over here as well. And it is the thickest layer because it is, again, a protective layer. So that is pretty much it for the different layers within the retina and this whole like back eye area. All right, now we're going to zoom in over here. So what this image is depicting is it is depicting this region of the eye. So it's showing a little bit of the lens, a little bit of the iris, cornea, and the ciliary body. So the way that I always like to kind of look at these images is I like to imagine that I am zooming out on it. So I'm actually going to shrink this image just a tiny bit and show you what I mean. So this is only showing part of the lens. I like to kind of visualize the whole lens over here. So we have a big old lens. Then this is going to be your iris. So this is one portion of the iris, and then you have the other iris is going to be over here on the other side. Your ciliary body is going to be over here. You're also going to have another ciliary body over here. And then your cornea is just going to keep on expanding over here. And now I feel like this kind of depiction looks very similar to this model over here, where this is the lens, two irises on the side, ciliary body, and then your cornea over top. So that is how I would kind of go about looking at this. And I feel like that kind of helps. Another really good thing to kind of keep in mind with looking at this is to just identify one factor in this image that you for sure know you are correct on. So for me, for example, I would see, this structure over here at the end, and I would be like, I know for sure that that is the lens. The lens has a very particular type of look to it, and therefore, from there, I can kind of figure out what the rest of these structures are just because I have memorized the models. So if you memorize the models and you know at least one aspect on the histology that you are completely 100% sure on, then you can kind of figure out the rest. So that is my tip for histology of the eye. I hope you guys found this video informational. If you have any other questions or concerns, leave them in the comment section. If you would like some extra anatomy tutoring, I also offer that. So please comment and I can give you guys some one-on-one help and some extra resources as well. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Bye.